For millions of grandparents across the country, their roles are changing. I'm Tisha Powell.
And I'm Lee Zurich. They find themselves not just a grandparent, but raising children again. About a third of kids in the U.S. are being cared for by their grandparents, something known as grandfamilies. And it's a responsibility that often comes with little help, especially with housing.
Reporter Kristen Crowley shows us the push to support more grandparents who are raising children for the second time in their lives.
Life doesn't always go the way we plan.
When your youngest son became an adult, did you think, that's it, my parenting days are over?
It's funny you asked that.
Sue Turner, a mother of 3, had life all figured out when she became an empty nester.
My plan was, when he graduated, I was going to go on a cruise for myself.
Did you ever get to go on that cruise?
No, ma'am.
Instead, Sue traded in the sun and the waves for diapers and formula.
About 12 years ago, Sue got a phone call letting her know she had a newborn grandson. But the call wasn't just to let her know he arrived. It was to ask her to take him home. His parents couldn't care for him, and the baby was born with drugs in his system. He otherwise would have been taken to foster care. For Sue, the choice was clear, and it wasn't the first time she had to make it. At this point, you already had his older sister.
Yes, I got her about a month before. She was 18 months.
Grandma Sue Turner was taking on the role of parent all over again, more than 20 years after she first became a mom.
So you were starting all over.
Starting all over, and I was a single grandparent raising 2 grandkids.
She's not alone in this unexpected life change. It's estimated more than 2.5 million children in the U.S. are being raised by a grandparent.
Are we seeing a trend, a growing trend in grandfamilies?
We do know anecdotally that we are seeing a lot more.
A trend Anna Beltran, director of the Grandfamilies and Kinship Support Network, says comes in part as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic that left some children orphaned and the opioid epidemic that left some parents incapable of taking care of their family.
Is it easy for grandparents to take on the role of being a parent to their grandchildren?
Easy, no. And it's often in a moment's notice. Moms drop the child off with grandma.
That's not the only struggle. Financially, Beltran says many grandparents are strapped. Some are forced to drain their bank accounts to provide for their grandchildren. And one of the biggest burdens is housing.
We've had cases of grandma and 4 kids in a studio.
Sue knows just how important that housing is. She lives in a building specifically for grandfamilies. All 36 units at Pemberton Park in Kansas City, Missouri, are dedicated to grandparents raising their grandchildren.
If this apartment for grandfamilies didn't exist, where do you think you'd be right now with your grandchildren?
Struggling.
Pemberton Park is the only one of its kind in the region, and according to Beltran, one of only 20 in the nation.
We had a waiting list the day that we opened.
Ed Lowndes is the executive director of the Kansas City, Missouri Housing Authority. He says not only does the building provide the space needed for grandfamilies and amenities like a playground for children, the rent is based on what the grandparent can afford, no more than 30% of their income. He says without this complex, finding housing that fits the needs of both generations is not easy.
The focus still seems to be on either family or elderly, but not that combination. So we're very proud of what we have here today.
Have there ever been talks of bringing more of them to this area?
There have. The biggest impediment is funding.
That's something the federal government could change.
I have legislation to create a new grant program at HUD to help these grandparents be able to have access to more what they call multi-generational housing.
Senator Bob Casey of Pennsylvania proposed the Grand Family Housing Act. He says it would create grants to help improve existing intergenerational housing and create special living for grandfamilies. And Senator Casey says the benefits are twofold.
Grandparents had to step in out of an act of love, and by doing that, saving the government a hell of a lot of money.
by keeping children out of foster care, which can be a costly expense for states and taxpayers. The bill has bipartisan support, but it's not a lock yet for the senator.
We've got a lot of work to do on it to get that done.
That work, Beltran says, is crucial to bring grand family housing where it needs to be.
Ideally, what's a number that you would want to be at for grand family housing in the United States?
Well, I would say at least, obviously, one in every state.
At least double of what we have now.
Oh my gosh, yes, at least.
She says that can happen if more people see the need and see the people impacted.
Is that you?
People like Sue.
This is my purpose right now. For whatever reason, that's what Lord wanted me to do.
Sue is still making plans.
Oh, that's basketball? Okay.
But now, at 65, they consist of raising her grandchildren to be good people who go on to higher education, who live happy lives, and eventually, when the time is right.
My goal is still to go on that cruise.
The Grand Family Housing Act is moving slowly. Hearings just began in March 2024, nearly 1 year after it was introduced. But Beltran says her group will continue raising awareness on the importance of the issue and working to help grand families in need.
Another barrier facing grand families is getting legal custody of their grandchildren. Even when the parents want them to have it, the cost can be a hurdle.
And without that custody, grandparents can't make health decisions for their grandkids, enroll them in schools, and in some cases qualify for housing under housing authorities.
Children and grandparents coming together under one roof isn't just for family members. Some experts say there's a real benefit for daycares and retirement homes existing as one. In Kansas, a community created what they're calling Grand Friends.
It creates joy in people. To have generations be together is like real life. And one of the things that we're always taught is you don't want to feel like you're living in an institution.
To learn more about the impact intergenerational centers have on young and old, head to investigatetv.com and search Grand Friends.